All right, thank you everyone for waiting. We're going to go ahead and get started here in our presentation on presenting your findings through charting. In today's training session, we're going to cover a number of different topics related to charting in MarketSight. So we'll cover how it's possible to make charts from both crosstabs and data views. We'll take a look at customizing chart appearance through different options that are available to you, as well as designing a PowerPoint template so that you can have customized output. And we'll also take a look at some of the features that are going to be available to us in the 10.9 release. All right, so let me go ahead and then bring up MarketSight for you here today. Currently, this is the homepage, as you are no doubt well aware. We will be adding the video of this webinar to our list of videos, so do keep an eye out for that. If you have any questions later on, please feel free to reach out to us. You can always send in a comment or a question via the chat box or via email. We'll try to get to everything as we can during the webinar. If we can't get to your question or it's too specific for the webinar, not a problem. We'll follow up with you by email. All right, so let's go ahead and discuss creating charts. We have two different locations from which we can create charts. The first, and by far the most common, is creating a chart from a crosstab. Generally speaking, if you're going to make a chart from a crosstab, you're going to want to consider keeping this crosstab relatively simple. The reason why is, of course, the more you show in a chart, the less you might actually see. So you might consider having two crosstabs, one for the actual purpose of analysis, and then one that you would build specifically for the purposes of charting. Let's say, for example, I will build a simple crosstab where I have age groups in my columns. And let's say I will take in different recommendation variables in my rows. Commonly, we can use these to make different top and bottom boxes that we can chart as well. Let's say, for example, I wanted to chart top box. Not a problem. I'm going to need to make sure that I turn that on in my crosstab design first. In the case of netting, or the top box, I'm going to check this box here at the top. By default, it includes the top two values, which works just fine for my purposes since that's what I want, but this can also be adjusted. I can then apply these netting settings to other variables in my design by selecting them and moving them over here to the right. When I click OK, my nets will be added, and this becomes something that I will be able to chart. So again, as a general rule of thumb, keep it simple, and then make sure that you have what you want to chart within your crosstab. I'm going to go ahead and actually show only my top and bottom boxes, and I'm going to do that by selecting this checkbox here. The first time I check it, everything will be selected, but the second time I check it, only my top box will be shown. Now that I have what I'm looking to chart, I'm going to go ahead and save my crosstab. In terms of charting from the crosstab, you have two choices from how you would like to proceed from here. The first choice is going to be making an individual chart. You'll see next to any row variable here, individual chart icons that will highlight the rows that will be included in that chart. All I need to do to create a chart from one of these is simply click on it and then choose the appropriate chart type that I'm looking for. MarketSight will gray out charts that may not be applicable for my data. For example, in this case, I can't create a gauge or a KPI chart because I have too many data points to show. A KPI is a single data point, for example. Since I have at least 3 here, not including my total row, well, too many. That said, again, if I simply click on any one item, that will bring up that chart dialog, but I can also choose to make multiple charts at once. So in many situations, you might pick and choose which variables you chart by using that icon. But if you're looking to chart all of your row variables in one go, you're actually looking for an option up here in the gray toolbar called Batch Charting. When I click on Batch Charting, that's going to open a new tab within my browser that will bring up the Batch Charting dialog. Here, I have all of the same options that we'll see in the other editor. The major difference here being that I will export any chart for any row variable that I select here on my Data tab. So as long as I select a calculation and select variables, batch charting can make more than one chart for me in one go. Now I am going to show you the export real quick here, and we're going to come back to this, but this is one of the first places where you'll see a template come into action. As you can see, we have several templates that have been uploaded to this account, and I can select any one of them in order to export directly to that template's look and feel. When I've begun that, that's going to queue up a tasks list here, and then of course when that completes, I can go ahead and open that file. Once this file opens, you'll see that I now have customized output, and this output is also fully functional as every chart export from MarketSight is. So I could say go in and edit the data or apply changes to the visuals here in PowerPoint. Heading back to MarketSight though, let's take a look again at that batch charting dialog and see how it relates to the single chart that we have. So if I go back to my Crosstab, that's okay, I will leave this page. I will see that should I choose any single chart here, I'm going to get the same set of options here in the chart editor on the left. So again, it's all about that same editor there. The experience is very much the same. It's just whether or not you wanted to choose to create one chart at a time or more than one. Let's take a look then at some of the options that we have here in this editor. By default, I'm pulling several options already from a template from my account. Again, we're going to come to those templates briefly here, but let's take a quick look at some of the choices. I can, of course, at any point change my chart type, whichever I would prefer, all available to me. I can change the data that I'm showing in my chart, and this is a critical thing for those of you who would like to put in more than one row variable in a chart. As you can see here on my Data tab, my additional row variables are being displayed. If I select them here, I will then get an extra data series appearing. Of course, I can continue to select more, or I can select less. That is up to me. But be aware, again, that what you see here is going to be based on what you put into that underlying crosstab. So I see these variables and I see these calculations, such as column and count, because that's what I had displayed. Taking a look at some of the other tabs that are available, we have a Colors tab. As you can see, my first choice is pulling from the template. My next choice is pulling from what it calls Custom. For those of you who would like to take a look, the Custom is actually set under your options here under your name. This is something where you can also set it individually if you would like on a per chart basis by clicking on any one of these small squares and then choosing either a web safe color or a custom color based on a hex code or RGB values. Finally, if I have multiple templates that are uploaded to my account, I can go ahead and choose from those templates here as well. This is in fact a drop-down. So if I choose, say, the Global Research template, you'll see the colors that are available adjust as a result. Standard template, again, colors adjust. So it's all going to be based then on the templates that you have available to you. Now, in terms of interactivity, this is an interesting tab. This one is going to be able to be used if you have additional row, column, or filter variables in your underlying crosstab. Now, as you might recall, I have multiple row variables in my crosstab. I have one for different brands. So if I select to turn on my row interactivity, I might choose to synchronize my variable names in my chart title. The reason why is because should I send this chart to someone, be it a colleague or a client, they are able to come here and use this drop-down that's appeared here at the top to adjust which brand they're looking at. Since I'm synchronizing the variable names in the title, that name will update to reflect that selection. This means that I'm able to really provide a lot of content for users, again, be they colleagues or clients, by placing multiple rows into that original underlying crosstab. This can be expanded upon, again, if you add additional columns or additional filter variables. Those can also be turned on, and users can work with those to adjust the content that they're seeing in a chart. The interactivity is especially something that you want to consider looking into if you're looking into dashboards, so something to think about as well. Now, the remaining tabs here in our designer are all going to be, by default, disabled. The reason why is because they're pulling the chart options from the template itself. Now, this can always be deselected. So, for example, if I wanted to go and change my legend position, rather than on the right, perhaps I wanted my legend to be above the chart. Not a problem. I can certainly do that. But the idea of the template, of course, is that it's remembering things like my fonts, for example. So I don't need to remember that my title needs to be Arial regular 14 point. So generally, you probably will want to leave these selected, but of course, again, up to you in terms of your design. Effects is going to be useful if you are saving this chart online. If you are going to share it online and you want to impress people with a little bit of fancy magic, you might choose to turn on chart animation. This is going to control the duration of the animation for when this chart initially loads. So this is something that you can adjust via the arrows or via the sliders, and that will take either less or more time up to a maximum of 1 second. Opacity could be interesting if you're working in dashboards as a design choice. It will literally take your chart and make it more transparent. Of course, making it completely transparent is probably not recommended, but it is an option should you choose for it. I will leave my opacity at 1 for the moment, and let's take a quick look at our axis tabs as well. Again, these by default are going to be pulling from that template file, so normally you may not even have to come here to set these options. However, if I wanted to do something like turn off an axis, perhaps I thought it would look better if I got rid of my numeric axis, for example. Not a problem. Those can, again, easily be adjusted as well. No more axis labels. Perhaps I don't want the axis title. All very easily done simply by clicking and choosing different options. It is possible as well, just to keep in mind for convenience's sake, that all of these options can be set via your options, once again, underneath your name, and then options here. So you'll see all of these choices there as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adjust my chart name slightly so I remember which one I made. And I'm going to go ahead and save this chart. So we've discussed creating charts from crosstabs and how we can create either multiple charts at once by using batch charting, or how we can create single charts one at a time by using the individual charting icons. We've taken a look at some of the basic options for customizing those charts. Those are going to be the same whether I'm using the batch charting or the single chart options. Before we hit the templates, though, to discuss setting up customization as a default, let's take a quick look at creating charts via data views. So I'm going to head to the Data Views tab, and I'm going to go ahead and take a look at some of my data views here. We can see that I have several already built. Generally speaking, we have two types of charts that can be created through the data view area. The first is going to be a scatterplot chart. You can use a scatterplot with any numeric variable that you have. In this case, I'm using two continuous variables within this data view. If I see these little icons here indicating a scatter plot, I can simply click on that and MarketSight will create a scatter plot showing respondent level data. Now that respondent level data is key. That's why these particular chart types are not being shown in the Crosstab editor. The way to think of it is that if you're showing a calculation, such as count or column percent, that's something that a Crosstab does. Whereas if I'm just perhaps doing a scatter plot here, again, that's showing respondent level data and not really a calculation. The other type of chart that is available to you via the data view is going to be the word cloud. So let me open up a word cloud based data view here. I'm going to go with this one. Anytime you have an open-ended response or a string variable within your data set, if you include that within your data view, you'll see the word cloud icon appear here as well. If I click on that word cloud icon, MarketSight will parse the open ends and it will create a word cloud for me. Now, by default, again, it's pulling those colors from the default template, my default settings. So this then is potentially a good time to discuss those templates in greater detail. If you're looking to access your templates in your account, you're going to look first for the charts page, and I will leave this page. And then when you're on the charts page, you're going to look for the templates button here. Every account will have the standard template in it unless it has been deleted at some point. If that's the case, simply reach out to us at customer service and we'll be happy to send you a new copy of the standard template. As you can see, an account can have multiple templates uploaded. So conceivably, I could have different templates for different projects or even for different clients, all loaded within my account. You can also see here too that only one template can be set as the default. So the default is the one that controls those options that we've been looking at. It controls how my charts appear online, so which colors does it appear in when I first create it. It really controls the colors and the fonts primarily. That said, of course, as you can see, multiple templates in your account for exporting purposes, definitely not a problem at all. Let's go ahead and open up the standard template so we can take a look at how this template is built. So the standard template here is one that MarketSight uses to format all of the different charts that it makes. You might look at this presentation and worry a little bit because it only has these slides here that you see, these 6 slides, of which only 5 have charts. That said, really don't have to worry because again, these are really just the basis or the underlying settings for other chart types as well. The general gist to creating a customized template is to open the standard template as we've done and then make modifications to this template. So we don't necessarily want to change the slide order. We'll leave that as is. And we don't really want to get rid of too much. For example, all of these slides will have, say, a filter box on them. That's great. If I need to export filter details, I need this box to be there. So generally speaking, you'll leave things where they are in terms of their content, but you can move them around, you can format them, and you can change the colors. You can do things like adding logos. So for example, let's say I wanted to take my dynamic title here, and let's say I shift it over to the left just a bit. Let's say, of course, I want to do more formatting. So I make that left aligned, perhaps I make this bold, and let's say I change it from Arial to something, oh, I don't know, let's go Century Gothic. We'll make it a little larger, a little more important looking perhaps. And let's say we want to change the color. All of these sorts of things, again, are completely doable. Whenever you change something about the appearance, that's great. Likewise, I can take this chart and I can say move it around. It doesn't have to stay this size either. You know, perhaps I wanted to leave space for a text box in my chart, or on my slide, I should say. Not a problem. I can simply make this a little smaller, move it over a bit, and call that good. I can also format the colors. Now, in terms of changing the colors, this is the easiest, of course, if you're familiar with PowerPoint. However, if you are not familiar with PowerPoint, there is an easy way to change all of the colors all at once. To change the colors in your file, and to do that all at once, you're going to want to head to the Design tab here in PowerPoint. You'll see that in the Design tab, there's a section for themes, a section for variants, slide size, format background, and then Microsoft's design ideas, which we'll skip. What we're looking for specifically is underneath the variants. So when you find the variant section, you're going to look for this arrow. It kind of looks like 2 arrows almost pointing down here. It's the More button. If I click on that, I'm going to see an option for colors. PowerPoint will already come with a number of pre-built color schemes, but you can always create your own as well. If you are looking to create your own color scheme, simply choose the Customize Colors option right here, and then the colors that you are looking for in particular are the accents 1 through 6. So let's say hypothetically here, I wanted to choose different shades of green. Not a problem. I can simply put in again my RGB values here to get specific codes if my clients are particular. Otherwise, I simply change these 6 colors as necessary based on what I need to see. So when I go about this, again, I'm really only looking at these 6 accent colors. Those are my primary concern, if you will. Let's say we'll put in a dark green. And once I'm done with that, I've essentially accomplished my task. So let's say I'll add, say, very bright green, and we'll add our last color here, sort of a kind of like a yellowish green. How about that? So if I do need to make any changes, again, this is something that I can save, so I can always come back here. If I decide that perhaps a color is wrong or it's too close to the next one, that's not a problem. But again, you're just looking to change accents 1 through 6. Microsoft PowerPoint will default to the name Custom 1. Again, that can be changed, whatever you find most useful to label this as. Then when I click OK, or Save in this case, I will see that all of my charts have modified. They've been changed, and I now see my new color scheme. Now, you may be asking yourself, there were only 6 colors in that thing, accents 1 through 6. What the heck happens with the rest of the colors in my chart? As you can see, those are already being filled in for you. PowerPoint, as well as MarketSight, takes those first 6 colors, and then when it hits number 7, it starts all over again, but in a slightly lighter shade. So it fades it out a little bit. So every time you have a new data point beyond the number 6, it's just going to move on to the next color in your scheme, take a slightly lighter shade of it, and move on. So that's how you get the multiple color points. Now, in terms of adjusting these slides and repositioning things like the layout, for example, let's say I move those over, and now I like this, but perhaps, obviously, it's not looking like this on any of the rest of my slides. Not a problem. Of course, copy-paste is your friend. You can use the slide masters if you are feeling brave and bold. If you are not, no problem. Simply select all of the objects that you have formatted, copy those guys, and then you can simply get rid of the old versions in the other slides. Let me move that over so I don't overwrite him by accident. I think something like that ought to work. Let me select these. And now I simply paste in my new options there. So really, it's a fairly simple process. Again, especially if you're used to PowerPoint, it's a matter of clicking and dragging, copying and pasting, and just moving things around until it approximates the layout that you're looking for. If you do have multiple chart types that aren't shown, but MarketSight makes those chart types, again, don't worry about adding those chart types to the template. It'll be fine the way it is. Just consider the appearance when you are customizing your template file. So again, just moving things over, be a little consistent here. And then my last slide, and I will be done shortly. Of course, this took all of perhaps 5-10 minutes. When working with your templates, if you do have any questions or challenges facing you, perhaps you can't figure out how to add a certain object or PowerPoint is being confusing, please do feel free to reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to help. The last slide that we have is one that does not have a chart on it. So that's going to be the title slide here. And again, this is something where we can adjust what we're looking at. So say, for example, I want to place that up. We want to left align it, make it bright and happy, make it bigger and more important, and let's say not Arial. So anything like that, again, all doable. You can add images, you can add logos, you can use PowerPoint's ability to add shapes. Now, since I've gotten rid of those other boxes there, for example, the date box that was right here in the middle, I'm not going to see a date on my title slide. But if I'm okay with that, that's fine. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure that I save this. So I'm going to do a save as. And in my case, I'm going to be a terrible person and I'm going to save this to my desktop. Of course, IT always recommends don't do that, but it'll be okay. So I will call this my modified green template, and I will save that. Now, of course, this template is all well and good, but I need to put it back into MarketSight for this to be most useful. So I will open up that chart templates page again here, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the New button. This is going to allow me to browse for that file that I just created. So I will head back to my desktop, and I should see my PowerPoint presentation there, right there, modified green template. I can then upload that by clicking OK. All right, so that is now in place. I can make this the default if I want this to be my, again, default settings here for all things by clicking Set Default there. And now if I choose to make a chart, that chart will be green automatically. I won't have to change anything about it. So let me go back to my Crosstab then, and let's make a quick chart just so we can take a look at that. Let's say, for example, I want to take my batch charting Crosstab here, and I want to make a bunch of charts from this, one for each variable that I have. So just as a refresher, we're going to go with batch charting. We're going to make sure that we select on the Data tab all of the variables that we would like to chart. And note that you may need to select additional calculations for all variables to show. For example, I have a multiple response variable here that shows mentions. Therefore, if I don't show mentions as a calculation, it isn't there. So do keep that in mind. But again, I'm going to hit Select All and Select All again. And now when I hit Export, I'm going to see that my modified green template is my default. So all I need to do is then simply click OK. And when I reopen this chart presentation, when my export completes, I will see that my charts will be green and formatted as I expect. So let's go ahead and open that. Ta-da! So my charts are now all green. They're off to the side as I expect. And so I should say have room to put in an additional text box or shape or image and do as I would like with my PowerPoint. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this guy. Now that we've discussed creating charts and crosstabs and views, we've covered customizing our template. We are now moving on into the concept of ChartSync. Of course, when I have charts that I've saved to MarketSight, that means that I can always go back and export them again. So let's say I go to the charts page, and let's say I will open up this particular chart, household income. This was a chart I made a while back, still have it, so I can always go back and export it at any time. And ChartSync is a feature that then becomes relevant to me. Because I've had this chart for a while, perhaps it's possible that I'm doing a tracking study and new data has come in. My chart may now be out of date. That's not a problem because not only can I update the chart online in MarketSight, I can also update the offline chart as well. So let me go ahead and export this particular chart. It's going to go to my green template. I'm going to choose to use my options for my template only. So it should override the blue color that I've selected here. And I'm going to click OK. Again, that doesn't take too long, so that's my standard task over there. I'm going to go ahead and download this file, so I'm going to save it first. I'm going to leave it on, let's say we'll put it on my desktop. Now, a couple of interesting things to take a look at here with that. Let's go ahead and open up that particular file. Just as a point of reference, I do want to keep in mind that my column percentage here, we have 19, 18, and 16. All right? So let's consider this lovely file the first wave of data that I made beautiful charts for, that I exported to PowerPoint into custom templates, and that I shared with clients. Now, when a new wave of data comes in, if you are a long-term MarketSight user, you're probably very familiar with the concept of appending. Appending is the means by which we combine data sets in MarketSight. So I could take both my original data set and add that new data to it. Since I don't want to make you go through the append process while we're talking about charting, I've already gone ahead and done the append for you. So in this case, I will select my appended file. Now I'll head back to my charts page. Now, looks like there's my household income here. And if I take a look at this guy, I'll open this up. Do take a note that this is now in my appended version of my data set. So my percentages are now 19, 19, and 16, which is obviously different from 19, 18, 16. All right, so we definitely have a presentation here that we need to update. Not a problem. That's where ChartSync comes into play. So again, after you've done your update of your data via append, you're going to come here to the charts page to look for PowerPoint Sync, which is up here in the gray toolbar. What this allows you to do is to browse for that file that you previously exported. So I'm going to go ahead and look for my chart there, and this is the one I would like. So now that I've browsed for that file, MarketSight's going to upload a copy of it. It's going to look at this chart. It's going to see if it can find the same chart in my new data set. If it does find the same chart, it's going to replace the Excel data that's underneath that chart, as well as any of the options that I have selected here. I simply click OK to proceed. When this is complete, MarketSight will give me a new file. So my old file is never completely overwritten. I always have that, and I can go back to it if need be. But let's go ahead and open up the new version here. All right, so you can see this is now 19, 19, and 16. I'll move that over to the side. We'll zoom in just a tad on this guy. And then let's take the other one and move him over here to the right so we can compare easily. We'll zoom in again. Perhaps not 100, that might be a bit much. There we are. So same chart, yet the data is now different. So again, that workflow, you get that new wave of data in, simply add it to your original data set with append, and then you can use PowerPoint Sync, or ChartSync as we like to call it, to sync that data and make sure that that presentation is now up to date. All right, so that is PowerPoint ChartSync. That's especially handy, again, for tracking studies, but can be used for many things because, again, it's going to update those charts that are in that presentation. Now, very critical thing, if you ever notice that you've done PowerPoint Sync and it seems like maybe something hasn't updated, you'll want to check out the log file. So whenever you do a sync in MarketSight, you'll get this log file that you can open from your tasks list. When I open this log file, it's going to actually give me a list as well as a summary of what did or did not successfully sync. In this case, I can see, for example, that I had one total chart, and it had a chart code, so it did successfully sync. Excellent. I would see different numbers, of course, if things had gone wrong. And if they had, the details page will give me any notes that I might need to know about why a chart did not sync. So always check that log file if you think something may be a bit strange, because if it is, there'll be a reason for it. And if you have any questions about that reason, reach out to us at customer service and we'll be happy to assist. All right, we've covered a lot so far, but we do still have a couple of different items remaining on our list of things to cover here. I'm going to go ahead and open up that household income chart one more time. And we need to discover or talk about sharing, of course, with clients. Most of us, in fact, I would dare say all of us in this day and age are more than familiar with PowerPoint and sending PowerPoint decks to clients. A lot of us still do things that way. Absolutely not a problem. As we've shown, it's very easy to export that data to PowerPoint, but there may be a case to be made for keeping it online. Now, if I keep a chart online, I do have some advantages to that. The append function, for example, that makes sure that my data is always up to date because, of course, those numbers are connected to that chart. That chart has not been removed from MarketSight, so it's all tied together. I can also use these in dashboards. So I could say have a collection of charts, perhaps even charts from different data sets. I take these and I could put them together to give a greater sense of a story to my clients. And of course, because there is a password required for many methods of sharing, there's also that sense that somebody has to know the login in order to get to this item. It's not, say, a deck that can simply be passed around, edited, and so on. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these sharing options. The first option that I see here under Share is Email a Link. This one is going to allow me to provide links to specific email addresses. These links can either expire within a day or never expire, so they would always be good. This is a good idea for situations in which you don't need a user to log in, so you don't necessarily need that security. And, well, maybe the client doesn't have a login. You haven't made one of the free client logins for them. Not a problem. This is a great option for that. It sends them an email, again, that links them directly to this location. My next option under Share is going to be Show URL. This one does require a login. So that can be either a full access user or a read-only user. Read-only users are a type of user in MarketSight that are free, but as you might have guessed from the name, they're only able to look at content. They can use interactivity if you've put that in, but if you haven't, well, what they see is what they get. If you're going to share this with a client, 9 times out of 10 you're going to use the full URL that you see here. This again is going to take them directly to this location. They will be prompted to log in and they will be able to see this particular chart. If you are using web services with the APIs to show MarketSight content within your own website, this ID link will be useful for you. But that's really only for that particular circumstance. For the most part, most of us are going to be using the first option here. Now, last but certainly not least in my menu here, I can also choose to add this chart to key findings. So if I add to key findings, this is something where I could put this within a folder if I would like. I don't have to. I can leave it in the main. But generally speaking, putting in a folder doesn't hurt because you can apply permissions to those folders. You can apply permissions to individual objects as well. What this means is that this item is going to be placed into the key findings portal. Let me open up a separate browser here so that you can see how that might look to a key findings only user. So a key findings only user then, often used for clients but can be used for colleagues if you're looking to share data with them but not have a full MarketSight license for them because perhaps they just don't need that. So let's log in as a key findings user, and let's see what this person sees. All right, so I'm going to move this window down just a bit to the side, so that way we can compare what we're looking at with what a full user sees. All right, so on the right-hand side, we have the key findings only user. This is the free user, and this user can only see what I've been given or what I've given them access to. So, for example, that household income chart is available to my key findings user. However, my key findings user cannot see this training examples folder. It's simply not there. I can also see that other things that aren't there include the main site navigation. They can't go to Crosstabs, for example, and cut the data on their own. They can't go in and edit an item, for example. So that option, that command or delete, for example, not even there for them. Again, the idea is that I can share different items with my clients or colleagues online. That way they stay up to date, and there's an element of self-serve in it. So if I do provide, say, interactivity, they can select that, they can work with it, cut the data different ways, and then export that to PowerPoint. Now, the last thing that I had mentioned in terms of sharing charts in MarketSight would be the option to put them into dashboards. Clearly, we don't have time to go into a full dashboard training session today, but I do want to at least point out the way that workflow works. In general, you will, of course, have uploaded your data set. You will have made some crosstabs, you will have made some charts. By the time you've made crosstabs and charts, you are then ready to head to the dashboards. If you're going to make a dashboard, there's a very easy way to do so. I would recommend using the New option here, and then Dashboard from Template. We also have a do-it-yourself approach, which is like a blank PowerPoint slide. And then finally, you can also ask our design services team to do the work for you if you would like. All right, so I'm going to pause my share for just one moment because I want to bring up our test server here. And we're going to take a quick look at some of the changes that are going to be taking place to charts in MarketSight in our next version, which is coming out hopefully in June at this point in time. All right, so do bear with us. This is a test server, so errors do often happen. I'm going to resume sharing my screen here. All right, first and most dramatic change for charts. It's going to be visible immediately once you get to the charts page. And that is, it is now possible to create charts without making a crosstab. Yep, that's going to be doable in 10.9, our next version. What happens that essentially MarketSight creates that underlying crosstab for you so that you don't actually have to deal with it at all. You could simply upload your data, come here to charts and say, I'm going to make a line chart today. Each one of these chart types will have a small wizard that you can then work through in order to place different variables into this chart. So for example, I might take something like quarter, stick that into my horizontal axis. And let's say in my legend, what shall I segment this by? Perhaps I'll go with the demographic there. Let's say I will choose age groups. Okay? And then last but not least, I get to choose whether or not I would like to be able to filter this. Let's say I will put in some additional variables, such as gender, and let's say travel per year. Great. Now I'm done. MarketSight's going to go ahead and make that crosstab in this new version, and then it's going to take me directly to the chart. That's it. That's all I have to do. All right, so give our test server a moment to load here. And here we are. I didn't even touch the crosstabs page, so definitely a major change there. Now, you can also notice another major change that's going to be occurring in charts as well as in other areas of the application, and that is the filter panel is going to be dramatically different. Currently, the filter is really only a series of drop-downs. However, it's going to be much more robust in the new version of MarketSight. It's also going to show me what my current selection is. So if I have multiple variables, for example, I can deselect something, and that's going to show me my current selection, and I could actually get rid of this simply by Xing that out. When I add different variable types to my filter, I could even get different types of filters. So for example, if I put in a date variable, I would get a date picker. If I put in a continuous numeric variable, for example, I would end up with a slider. So lots of changes are on the way for the filter panel itself. This filter panel can also be adjusted. So right now, it's on the top of my chart, for example, but nothing is stopping me from coming to the Interactivity tab, which has been dramatically changed, and say, for example, move this to the left of my chart. My filter is now here on the left. I can change my theme from light to dark, in which case it's a darker shade of gray. And I can even change the color of the text as well as the color of the accent. So if I wanted to say choose a shade of green again, not a problem. So I can even format these, which was not an option before. So many changes definitely coming into play there. Now, I do want to point out that additional formatting options are going to be available. Line charts are especially going to benefit from this, as will scatter plots. So in the case of a line chart, I might choose to come here to my display tab, and I now have some additional choices. For example, I can take my line width, and let's say I wanted to make that 3 points instead of 1. Obviously, much thicker. Let's say I decided round was boring. I definitely needed diamond as my marker type. Couldn't do that before, but in 10.9, that's going to be doable. The markers themselves can also be adjusted. So let's say I wanted to go up to 12. Makes those a little bit bigger. So I can get very specific about these different formatting choices now, whereas before they weren't available to me. Now, as mentioned, the other place where you'll see many different formatting choices come into play are going to be in the scatter plots. So let's go to the data views page, and we'll make a quick scatter plot for that. All right, so let's open up this guy here. And we'll make a scatter plot based on our two continuous variables here, simply by clicking on that. This probably looks pretty familiar right now. And again, apologies for the error, test server. But we now have a number of different choices that are available here. So for example, if I'm not fond of black, perhaps again, green is my choice today, I can change it to green. In fact, I don't actually have to go with a single color. I could choose, say, varied opacity, in which case I can base that opacity on a variable. So I could say, all right, if they use more, it's going to be darker. If they use less, the opacity is going to be lighter. And if I zoom in here, for example, that's going to be even clearer. You can see how those different shades come into play. Size is also something I can change. So again, let's say I wanted to use that monthly cell phone bill. If I adjust that, now I can say, clearly, the person who has used the most has the largest one here, but folks who have used less, definitely much smaller. So I can actually get visual cues about my data within the scatter plot. I'm also able to do things now like change the shape. Again, let's say diamonds are my thing. And hey, I can even change it from filled to border, in which case I get something like that going on, which looks kind of cool. So definitely a lot of formatting changes also coming into play with the charts. All right. So that really concludes the new content for our training today. Let's take a look at the questions that we have and see if there are any that we can answer for everyone here today. Yes, there is a next button. So if I'm looking at an individual chart within MarketSight, I can see that I have previous and next here. This enables me to navigate back and forth between different charts that I have saved simply by clicking on those buttons here. So that is available, again, for charts. All right, so we have another question. If I have a chart that a colleague made, can I use that in my dashboard? The answer to that is yes, as long as your colleague has given you permission to do it. So of course, if your colleague has not given you permission to see that chart or the data set, you will not be able to access it. However, most likely our colleagues are, generous people, so they probably have. In that case, if you have access to any chart, let's say I'll just make a new dashboard to show you, you will see that chart listed here on the Charts tab of the editor. So that's going to show you all of the different choices, and the chart that your colleague made will be listed in here. Note that you can use the change link as well to get charts from different data sets. All right, we have another one. Is it possible to update all charts as a batch, or must we do one at a time? You can do them all at once. So essentially the only thing that you need to have is a single presentation that has all of those charts in it. So if you've used batch charting, for example, that works perfectly. But again, if you have multiple charts within your PowerPoint, MarketSight's going to look at each one of those. It's going to check all of the charts in that presentation before returning a new and updated file to you. So you can have multiple charts that update and you only have to do that step once. All right, a couple of other changes. So formatting changes for word clouds, we are adding those. Those will be coming periodically as we update. I believe the next change that will be coming for word clouds specifically is not formatting so much as it is an additional list of stop words. So words that don't necessarily show up, like the word the, for example. All right, next question. When is the version 10.9 being released? That's going to be released this June. Things are currently on schedule, and of course, we hope that they will always stay there. So keep an eye out next month, and we should see some updates being released. All right, last question. All right, so to bring all of the variables in the single chart, let me go ahead and create a quick crosstab there. In fact, I think I saved it, didn't I? I must have saved it, so let's look for it. P.S. If you've never seen this fill box here in the corner before, it's hidden in plain sight. Very handy. You can use it to search for different crosstabs. And it seems I may have changed my data set, so likely why I'm not finding it. But let's say we'll take a look at this guy. All right, I'm going to go ahead and actually edit this particular chart. So I'm going to add some variables here. Let's say we'll do all of these guys. All right, so let's say, hypothetically, I need to create a chart where I have all of these variables in a single chart. The easiest way to do that is to begin by making sure that they're all present in my underlying crosstab, and then making a single chart. When I have my single chart, the next step is going to be visiting the Data tab, where those variables will be listed. So I simply select them here, and as you can see, they will then be added. And then just as a fun little tip or trick with charting, lovely little button here called Flip Variables, which can change the way you look at the chart. In this case, it's now by company here, you can see, with the familiarity being the legend. And in addition, I can do formatting data points. So if I wanted to change the labels that I see, perhaps I wanted to shorten those guys up in my chart, I can do that as well. So in summary, the way to make that chart with multiple row variables is to make sure that they're all in the underlying crosstab. Then they will show here on the Data tab, and you can add them to your chart. All right. There will be a video available for today's session that should be released later this afternoon, if not a little earlier, but definitely by the end of business today, we anticipate. All right, and that's it. If you ever have any questions, again, about PowerPoint templates, customizing your charts so that you have output that looks like you want it to, please feel free to reach out to us. I happen to like PowerPoint and working with it, so we will definitely not resent any inquiries that you send. Thank you so much for your time today, and have a wonderful day.